This is Sexy Funny Raw, where we chat all about the world of sex, from dating and relationships all the way to the adult industry itself. I'm Silvia Saige, and this is my Pornspective, answering all the questions you weren't even brave enough to ask Google. Get ready, because Sexy Funny Raw starts now.
Hey, hey, hey! Welcome back to another episode of Sexy Funny Raw. I am your host, Silvia Saige, and of course joined in studio by my co-host, Dr. Eddie, giving us his public health perspective. It's going swimmingly here today, you guys. I would also like to introduce our new guest for this month, a good friend of mine, actor. I don't know why I just called you an actor. You're not an actor. You're a comedian and writer, Kristi McHugh. Say hello to the people. Hey! You might be the first person to ever make a rolling entrance.
Oh, I love the rolling
show.
entrance.
I love it also. All right, guys. We are diving in today to a topic in which I think will be incredibly relatable for everyone. And if it's not, well, lucky you. So today we are talking embarrassing moments that have happened during sex and how we kind of get over these, or maybe how we prevent some of these from happening. So let's get into it, shall we? So we know that sometimes things occur in sex that maybe make the situation a little bit awkward. Anything from maybe a queef or a fart. Have you ever had anything that you considered to be a very uncomfortable experience during sex, Kristi?
I'm so anal, and not in the anal way.
Not in the anal sense.
But there's just weird things that I'll be like, my mind goes to other places and I can't concentrate sometimes.
Like you're thinking about a grocery list instead of...
Kind of like kickoff is about to happen and I want to watch the game. I'm just kind of opposite most girls.
You just like a quickie. That's what you're saying?
Sometimes. Or I'm like thinking, oh God, is he ripping the sheets? Like, my mind goes to all these like crazy places.
I can understand that because I think about cleanliness, especially if I'm in my own home. Yes. Like recently I was having sex on my couch and I squirted a bunch and it was like so wet. And all I was thinking was like the sex was hot, but I was like, is this going to come out of my couch? Am I going to have to replace this couch cushion? And I had a hard time getting into sex because I was like, this is an expensive couch cushion that I'm going to have to replace for this free sex I'm having right now, which is why I should never have free sex. That is a lesson, I think.
Or we could just throw down a simple sheet.
That's true.
With a little bit of planning.
Yeah.
We could go a long way.
A little bit of planning does go a long way, but it's not fun, Dr. Eddie.
I disagree, because if you have like a little kit ready to go, like a go bag, right? You can have
got a sex go bag with a sheet in it.
Yeah, and lube, of course, as we've discussed many times.
Always lube.
Condoms, if you're into them, all of those things.
Maybe a water bottle.
Sure, why not?
This is a tote bag you want me to carry.
A go bag for sex. I think we should really start a trend. It's really important to have. I think the sheet would take a lot of that anxiety and stress off, because you don't want to have to aim. You don't want to have to worry about that kind of stuff.
No one wants to.
I'd say let's a little bit of planning. We don't need a book. We just need a little bit of planning. It goes a long way.
But there are mishaps you can't plan for.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay, I found, because we discussed what was about to happen on the show previous, and Kristi said she's never farted or queefed, and I find that to be mind-blowing to me.
Well, I think there's more of a psychology behind it. Like, I think I've told my body I'm not going to do that.
Like mentally?
Yeah.
You're just like, lock it down.
Your mind is powerful. I mean, in all, right? I mean, is that not a thing? Like,
absolutely.
If you can tell and it's like my body just won't do it.
To a point, right? And so that's also a personality type. That's also, that's a lot of different variables, but it's also potentially an opportunity you're missing to be free and open
100%.
And it be okay. Because what I think is interesting about what we're talking about today is that all of these things happen and they're normal because we're human.
Yeah.
And because they're normal and we're human, maybe we could laugh about them.
Yes.
Even if we're embarrassed, it's going to happen to everybody. It happens to men, women, and everything in between.
You know what I like to say when a queef happens for me during.
You're welcome.
No, but I'm always like, oh, she's talking dirty to you. You know, like I just like turn it into a thing. Like,
that's funny.
Yeah, like, oh, she's got one out for you. You know, like, come and get it. You know? But I think because especially in porn specifically, I'm in a lot of like weird positions, so the amount of extra air that gets in is
Definitely
extreme. You know.
Well, and so in a lot of those shots are often a full pull-out shot
Yes.
with a full insertion shot.
Yeah.
You're just pumping air.
Yes.
You're just pumping air. So
Yeah.
I can see how that would be a thing.
But for me, the farting, Kristi, it's crazy to me that you've never farted because I think to me when I'm like really released in an orgasm, like it just happens. I don't feel like I have that control. Like I can think to myself, don't fart, but then I don't get the orgasm either. Like I miss the orgasm.
I've never had the. I don't think I've ever had the urge.
I thought you were about to say you've never had an orgasm, and I was like, we have work to do.
Sounds like we might have a little bit of work to do.
Anyway.
There is.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. So, but did you have a crazy story that like something really went wrong? Like you said your first time having sex.
Oh my God, my
was, like,
first
wrong?
time. My first time. Okay, first of all, I was 23 or 24. 23. Yeah.
I am impressed by that. Was this a religious choice?
So there was this girl in my high school, and she was known to be like, and every guy was after her, but she never put out.
Okay.
And all the girls who put out like Coke machines, like,
Right.
nobody.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Coke
okay,
machine.
yeah. So I was like, okay, I have to do that. So, and then
So you're like, I gotta hold out.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then when you hold out for something, whether it be whatever, like a specific food or something, you're like, well, let's make it really count. So then I like got older and it was through college. I'm like, well, now like I gotta make sure like this has got to be amazing,
yeah.
right? So I was in LA and my friend Erica was like, it's gonna happen. It was gonna happen that Friday night with this guy that I've dated for maybe 3 months. And I'm like, okay. So she took me to only the best. We went to Fredericks of Hollywood.
I know you're about to say trashy
on,
laundry.
on Hollywood Boulevard.
That's nice. That's beautiful.
And I got this thing. I looked like a cupcake, and it was frilly. It was for a wedding thing. And then we had to get the matching robe, and it was just a whole thing. And then I was looking, researching, and I got the stuff that I have to shoot up in there, so like no sperm is left because I don't want to get.
Spermicide. I was like, what are you shooting? And what are we doing? Okay.
So
spermicide.
then I like, okay, it's happening, and we went out to dinner, and I was like, okay. Hang on 1 second. I went to I was in there for probably a half hour.
At the restaurant?
No, when we
Oh,
went
back
back
to
to
the
my
house.
place, and
Oh,
I'm
trying to
getting ready. Everything's got to be perfect. And I remember him yelling, I think you're beautiful. So I made my entrance, with a spin of the chair. And I come out there, and, that was on for 2 seconds. And then
Yeah. It's a
we're
waste.
doing it, and I'm like, is this it?
Oh.
Is this it? Is this, because I'm thinking there's gonna, there's gonna be
Fireworks.
fireworks,
Yeah.
the earth's gonna move. I'm like,
Yeah.
is this it? Is this it? Is this it? And he goes, yeah, this is it.
That
I'm
poor
like,
guy.
oh, like why did I wait so long for that?
Oh, that poor man. Also, he probably thinks it's like this big reward to have this
Yeah,
virgin,
yeah.
you know?
And I was like, oh, whatever, okay.
Oh, man.
And so then he was down there, and he didn't know that I put that stuff up in there, and his
Oh.
mouth got all like, yeah, I guess that's bad for them.
Oh,
Yes.
for a man to eat a spermicide?
Yeah, you don't want it in your throat.
The
No.
next day, he was like, something's
I don't
wrong
know.
with my throat.
Oh,
I'm like,
I think nothing's gonna happen to him. But
I
you
don't.
don't
Nothing
want,
did,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I was like, I don't know. I don't know, because I talked about nothing.
Oh, my God. That is amazing. First off, props to you for waiting until you were 23. Secondly, the fact that you thought to get a spermicide, but you're one of those research
Oh, I
heavy
am such a researcher
people.
person.
You probably
yeah.
looked into like all of the things
Oh yeah,
prior
all
to
the
doing this.
things.
But my God, he ate it, and you were like, "No, I'm not."
I go,
gonna
I don't
say.
know what you're talking about. Because that's how I was. Like growing up, we did not talk about anything.
Yeah.
I have a sister who's a nun. Like we were.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go for it. Yeah,
Do,
take it
do,
off.
do.
It's a sex show.
But I mean, like I was saying, like when I was going to get my first bra, it's like, oh my God, like all the girls are like, wearing these and my little, their little knobby
Yeah.
things in the beginning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta ask my mom. And so I waited till she went in the bathroom, closed the door. I'm like, Mom, can I get a bra? She goes, no. I'm like, okay. I ran outside. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going back in there. And It was like we didn't talk about anything.
Religion will take sex away from you and make it like this shameful thing, which is exactly what we try not to do here and make it a very topical subject. But see, that I just learned something because I didn't know, for one, that like I never even thought about someone eating a spermicide because I guess I never use a spermicide, so I never think about it being in your vagina. But is it going to do anything to them? Is it like gonna?
No. It just, I mean, you can have a reaction to it. So maybe.
Like
and it's not
It
something.
doesn't taste like whipped cream, evidently.
Right? Yeah.
You don't want to sit there and guzzle it either.
Right.
Right. And condoms have spermicide on them.
Oh, they
often,
do. Oh, okay. So
And
I've had spermicide in my mouth then.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if there's been condoms in
And
your
then
mouth,
I've
then probably.
yeah. And it does taste like that. It's like a tingly sensation.
It's a chemical you feel. It's
Yeah.
It's
Do
chemical.
they make flavored spermicide?
They do. And they
Do you
make-
do
yeah.
the blowy with the condom on?
I mean, not typically, but I definitely have. I mean,
That's weird. Is
yeah.
that weird?
It is weird. Yeah.
Well,
It's
I mean,
like-
that's actually what public health
Tells you to
professionals
do.
would probably tell you to do.
Yeah.
And dental dams, if you're going to be
yeah.
performing cunnilingus.
Dental dams.
Yeah, it's like a little plastic.
Ever
Having
used
those
one?
Oh, okay.
at the dentist, but not. Hold on.
Well, it's to prevent any fluids from transferring, right? Because if you brush your
Yeah.
teeth and you have anything post tooth brushing, you have little cuts really often. If you're down there going to town for half an hour, the chances of some of your vaginal fluid going into those cuts is certainly possible. So that's the recommendation.
Isn't that why you go to the little doctor before any of this happens?
You should, but that's assuming that you have access to a doctor, that it's okay, that you're old enough to even have these conversations. So there's like a lot of variables there. We're not always speaking to like the same privileged few that, sure, a lot of people probably do go to the doctor and have those conversations, but I can guarantee you young women and young men aren't having these conversations with their physicians.
Yeah.
Most of the time. They're learning a lot of their behaviors, as we've discussed many times, from the adult film industry,
Yeah.
which is super
Not
problematic. 'cause
suggested.
It's a show
Yeah.
that's being created.
Sorry, what did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh,
No.
So they're learning about sex through the through the
porn.
No, through porn.
Really?
In general.
That's where.
Well, yeah.
We actually live in a country where it's not okay, and if we look across the U.S. specifically, depending on what state you live in, that's going to tell you what kind of sex ed you get, if any at all, and it's already pretty bad.
Wow.
So we have young men and women that are being taught that sex is bad when it's not. There are some things that we need to know and precautions that we should take, but
Right.
for the most part, people don't know what they're doing. Everybody's fumbling. And the only thing that people have in their minds is pornography, which
Yeah.
young people watch.
Yeah.
Right? Even if that's not the intended audience,
Right.
it's there. And so if
Which
that's
is just a theatrical version of
of
sex.
course it is.
Yeah.
Right? You're never doing it in those positions
No.
and diving out to then dive back in.
Yeah.
You know, that stuff doesn't necessarily happen in
Yeah.
real life all of the time.
Yeah.
And so
Speak for yourself.
sure, I stand corrected.
I love my gaping asshole on a regular occasion.
Next time I'm on the swing flying across the room.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, that's just a piece of it, and it becomes complicated if you're living in the South or if you're living in the East versus the West, or the Northwest versus
Well,
the
we-
Midwest.
Right.
We also have people that watch this show, and like I've had people from the Philippines reach
Absolutely.
out and be like, "Look, this is the only education that I get," because they're not even allowed to
Wow.
watch porn in some of these places.
This is great.
So the conversation alone
Yeah.
is sometimes all the sex education they're getting. So
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one movie we would go to in 4th grade.
The miracle of birth that shows you from the inside.
Yeah. And then my mom's like, all right, well, see you after school. And then we never talk about it again.
wow,
And that was our sex education.
yeah.
Now
Which
you'd
is
have
usually
to-
like abstinence, also. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, what ends up happening with abstinence-only education, which is a big go-to here in the U.S., is that we're getting younger women getting STIs, pregnancy, all of those things. Like the age ranges for like HIV and for STIs has dropped from like 17 to 14. All of this is happening in places where we don't have sex education because we're saying abstinence only, which isn't realistic and doesn't
Right.
work.
It's not going to happen just because you tell them not to have sex.
Of
Doesn't
course
mean they're
not.
not going
Well, it's
to
coming.
have
Well, and it's also like the hypocrisy of all of these people having affairs on their spouses, saying
Right.
not to have sex is
Right.
a bit
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll
But
get
you
off
can
the
have a
box.
mistress. Yeah.
Sure.
Totally fine.
Or a mister.
Yeah, true. Pool boys, all the rage.
All the rage.
Okay, let's getting back to topic here. So other things that might necessarily go wrong that aren't really controllable or anything that we really need to even critique. So sometimes it's just a matter of fatigue, you know?
Oh my God.
You know?
That's happened.
I especially.
Are you snoring? Oh, sorry.
Have you fallen asleep during sex?
Oh God, yes.
Oh Lord. Oh my God. Okay, I don't know that I might have fallen asleep during sex. I'm sure it's happened. I feel like it's probably happened to everybody, or at least right at the very end, where you're just kind of like, you've just come.
The end for who? Oh,
Well,
okay,
yeah,
maybe.
you've just kind of come, and then you just like, you're too tired to even get the towel, and you're just like, sleep in it. You know? Like,
I think
it's fine.
tiredness also can blend in with a variety of different issues, right? 'Cause, like
Stress.
stress and
Yeah.
anxiety, because for men specifically, not to be bring always the men's perspective,
Yeah.
but for men specifically, there's a lot of things have to be in place. Right? It's not like, when you're a teenager or something,
You're ready to
the
go.
wind
Yeah.
blows and you have an erection. When we're older, it doesn't work that way most
Right.
of the time. And even seeing a beautiful naked person, man, woman, or whatever, doesn't always do the trick. Right? All of the time. And so all of these things have to be in place. And we don't often talk about that. And guys definitely don't want to talk about it because it can be embarrassing to not be up at full mast all of the time. And that's just not realistic.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. I dated a baseball player, and I'm like, what?
Tell his name. No, I'm just kidding.
I would like to, but yeah. Anyway,
Let's not shame anybody.
I know. I know, I'm
Okay?
kidding.
But I'm like, what is wrong? I kept going, what's wrong? And he's like, and I didn't realize.
Well, and the what's wrong
all
is
the-
also
all
what's
the
wrong.
drugs,
Oh.
the juicing that affects
Yeah.
your little wee wee.
It does. I've dated guys on
it
steroids
can,
too.
but it doesn't always, like, just because that's the issue,
That directly. yeah.
right.
Yeah. And
So-
they're- yeah. But I don't have this obviously because none of us have children, but finding the time, I think a lot for sex has a lot to do with a lot of my friends have small kids, so there's some of them are still sleeping in the bedroom or, they come in for that glass of water or whatever. And it's just hard to find 5 minutes where you're not being pestered by a small person wanting something,
5 minutes?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes I feel like you just got to get it in. You know?
Prioritizing it is, I think, a challenge for lots of people.
Yeah.
And because the world that we live in now, it's like a constant flux of everything all of the time.
Yeah.
Everything, everywhere, all at once, right? All the time. And so if you don't schedule it, but then the scheduling take away from like the spontaneity and
I
the
was gonna
sexiness
say,
of
yeah.
it, right? But if scheduling is the only option,
Yeah.
Even for people in your industry, I know that they're quite busy.
Yeah.
Right? You have to schedule, this is the weekend where
You
we're having
do.
a romantic weekend.
Yeah, of
and
course
stuff
you
like
do.
that. And so I think it's all kind of intertwined because
Mm-hmm.
everybody deals with stress and anxiety and all of those things in different ways.
Yeah.
And so
But sex can reduce that anxiety too.
it's true. Big time. Big time.
That's why they always say get fucked, like just.
But we don't prioritize sexual health the same way that we are only starting to prioritize mental health.
Right.
Right? Because all of these things are part of health, but
Of course.
physical health was what we focused on historically. Mental health, thankfully, we're at least including it in the conversation a lot.
Right.
And then sexual health is very far behind.
Well, because it's still such a shameful topic for so many people. So talking about it in general is a hard thing for a lot of people to do. So let alone to talk about any challenges that come with it.
Right.
Lord have mercy, But let's talk about, because we talked about, obviously, for a lot of men, there's a lot of pressure for them to get up, stay up, and be able to get up on a whim. But I think there's also a lot of pressure for women to feel like they have to stay wet. I know it's a huge thing people always say as a woman ages, she loses some of her, original wetness, I guess you would say.
Self-lubricating.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's even true because I feel like I'm still, raining shower clouds down on people from time to time. It just depends on how involved I am.
It probably
You
also
know?
depends on the age group, right? You're
True.
like, you might consider yourself older,
Old,
but
I
you're
do.
not even close, right? And so a lot of those research studies that have been done, we're talking 50s, 60s,
Right.
where people should still be having sex, but sometimes
Yes.
aren't. And then the lubrication factor is significantly less, right?
Oh, so the more they don't have sex, the less lubricated
As
they
we
get?
as we all age, women specifically are less wet. That's why I'm always talking about lubricant. Men, women, everybody should just have lubricant ready.
Right.
A go bag. remember
also,
that.
just because there's the fact that you could tear, you could tear,
Definitely.
you could rip, and then that makes you only more susceptible to STIs, which of course is another thing that can go wrong during sex, but one that is also preventable. For one, staying tested, keeping your partners tested, using precautions when you can. But Kristi, you have a funny story, and it wasn't necessarily about you, but you said that a friend had a mishap.
Oh, yeah. My neighbor, she came over one day and she had this just huge red eye, all like swollen. Like, what happened? And she's laughing about it. She goes, "Yeah, I went into the doctor. I didn't know what was going on, but she had gonorrhea of the eye.
Yeah.
Gonococcal
Because
conjunctivitis.
Into her eye." And she said she was at the doctor laughing about it. And he started like yelling at her.
The
It was like-
doctor?
yeah, he's like, you can go blind from this.
Oh, can you?
You can.
Oh.
Well, lots of things go wrong if we leave things untreated, for sure.
But I just want to say what had happened in her friend's situation is the guy had come on her face and it got in her eye.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So you're saying that can make you go blind if untreated?
Well, gonorrhea and chlamydia specifically, if
Oh.
left untreated, can do all sorts of weird things depending on
Will
what
chlamydia
part
transfer to your eye also?
It can, yeah.
Would you just go blind in one eye?
It really depends. There's going to be a bunch of variables, and it's not like this equals this. If you get an infection in the eye, you are going to go blind. That's
Right.
not how it works. It can happen.
A variety of things could happen.
So do you
variety.
wear a mask? How do you avoid this?
Well, testing.
Comes with goggles. Just
Well,
saying.
goggles
Yeah.
make sense
In your
too.
tote bag with your sheet and your lube. Also have
please.
your goggles.
Or we can make sure that we're all just getting tested
Right.
if we're lucky enough to have access, right?
Yeah.
Because not everybody does.
Yeah.
So if we're lucky enough to have access, the more we all test, that's why I keep saying quite often when we're talking, we could really learn a lot from the adult film industry
Yeah.
because everybody tests so much. If everybody started testing all the time, we'd really cut back on a lot of things.
Are there home tests?
Oh, absolutely. You can buy them at Walgreens.
Oh.
But-
And they test all the things?
So I think the home tests are really specific. Like one you'd have to get for gonorrhea, one for chlamydia. But that's why I do suggest just making it a regular thing. There are facilities that you can just go and test at for completely free, especially here in Los Angeles. But people put so much shame around going to test because I think to them that means like, oh, maybe I have something. No, like you should just test to have a clear. I've started testing in between every person that I have sex with only because I want the peace of mind. So when I show up to the testing facility, they're like, wow, you're working a lot. I'm like, nope, just for my own peace of mind. I would just like to know. Because if I also know, obviously working the show, that the longer you have something, the more, damage it can do to your system. So I would like to catch anything early, But also you can't just go the day after you had sex because a lot of things won't set in that quickly either. So you do need to give it like 48 hours before you go get tested. And then after you've come off of your medicine, you also need to give time for your body without sex again so you can retest and make sure that you are legitimately safe and that for whatever reason you have beat that antibiotic. Maybe you have become resistant to that antibiotic. So you will need to retest to make sure that you are safe again after getting the treatment.
Silvia Saige has been listening.
Yeah. Taking notes. Notes.
Definitely. I think it's really important. I think we all tested more.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I was telling her about being her friend because she's always able to drive because she's always on antibiotics.
Always on something.
Not drinking.
Yeah. But for me, it's not usually an STI. It's because I get a lot of bacterial infections from my pH being thrown off because I do have different sexual partners. And a woman's pH is incredibly sensitive. And so if my partner has had another partner, say I have a threesome scene or he has just had sex with someone else, and I make the decision to have sex with that person, I will likely throw my pH off, meaning I've got to get back on an antibiotic. So that is the antibiotic I spend the most of my time on is my pH getting thrown off. I'm just me trying to recorrect it. But I've also learned from Dr. Eddie that I've probably ruined that and maybe become a little bit resistant to that as well.
I would be very cautious about those kinds of things. You can't always be on antibiotics. That's terrifying to even hear that.
Yeah. Well, not always.
Right. And then taking things all of the time. I would
Yeah.
also be hesitant about that.
Yeah.
That's how we do a lot of the bad things that we do with antibiotics. And then not
Exactly.
finishing antibiotics. I don't want to be like on a box.
I already
today,
learned
but-
that lesson because I used to stop those antibiotics.
Yeah.
So
You don't stop them. You really have to take them the whole time.
Yeah.
You have to finish them.
Yeah.
And then you have to give your body a little break.
Absolutely.
Can you take probiotics while you're on antibiotics?
Don't know the answer to that.
It depends on the antibiotic, and that's a little bit more of a medical question than a public health question. But antibiotics, depending on the type of antibiotic, often can really, really impact your microbiome. And so the probiotics are super helpful and often encouraged to kind of repopulate a lot of those things. And so you can, maybe not in unison, but I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it in unison, but certainly after, because it's really important.
Interesting. Good to know. Take those probiotics after our antibiotics. Still learning.
I mean, during is fine, I suppose. I haven't come across any literature that suggests otherwise.
Okay.
But the point is that if you're taking them concurrently, you won't be replenishing or repopulating the biome the same way, right? Because you're killing them at the same time.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of killing things, just kidding. Killing the inside of a female's wall. That's what I'm going to call that. Because we're shedding the lining of our inside wall, and it's what menstruation, right? And I feel like a lot of men have a very hard time wanting to be intimate with a woman when she is menstruating. Also very strange to me, because if you knew how horny we are when we menstruate, you'd be on that shit. My hormones are out of control when I'm on my period. I don't know what it is, but I'm just cannot get enough. And for me, I'm the blood is lube. That is the one time where I have no problem laying down a towel or jumping in the shower. I don't care if we're both covered in blood. I'm down to get dirty. Just fuck me. That's how I feel on my period. And I don't like when men get freaked out about it.
I mean, men aren't usually exposed to lots of blood.
But
men aren't usually exposed to those kinds of things.
I disagree with you. Men are the ones always ramming their heads into shit, bleeding from their, knocking themselves unconscious.
But you're not dipping your stick in it.
I guess. I don't know. Men, I just say
should they care?
No.
That's a different conversation, I think. Certain people just don't like it.
Yeah.
And
I know.
It really becomes a couple conversation.
It really does.
I think everybody, if you're comfortable with it, have at it. And if you're not, then that's okay too.
No, if you're with me.
I like going, oh, shoot.
I had no idea. Oops. Is that my... I've done that when I'm like, did you cut yourself? And they're they're looking around I don't think so. I'm like, oh, must be me. Sorry. You go jump in the shower. I'll get you a towel. But thanks. That was fun.
I have a couple of problems with
Jump
that
in.
whole story. Because we should be really clear with each other what's going on. But okay. I would like a warning, even if I don't care. So that I don't freak out for a sec or get stressed or look down and think something's wrong.
Yeah, like you've just aborted someone's child or something.
No.
Yeah.
There could be cuts, tears. All of those things absolutely happen, right?
No,
if you're
yes.
engaging in anal sex,
Yeah.
tears happen often.
True, yeah.
If we're not using lube, lube
Yes.
helps with all of these things.
Yes, it does.
And so, yeah. So, but still.
Lube is like a pre-Band-Aid for your pussy and asshole. Honestly, though. It is.
That's fair.
It's like just, make it to where nothing's going to go wrong. Just a slippy slide. Who doesn't love a slip and slide?
So important.
It is.
It's so important.
I love a slip and slide. So let's talk about not always finding the male G-spot.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of men think because they've ejaculated that's it for them, But we, of course, know because of science that the male prostate is where?
In the anus.
In the anus. Yes,
Well,
it is.
technically. Technically, it's not. It's along the wall of the rectum.
Oh, okay.
So it's on the other side of like a very thin
wall.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
it's not in the rectum per se, but it's certainly, you can feel it if you insert a finger or something.
Yeah.
else,
Or
right?
the doctor has to do the finger wave to check the prostate.
It's true.
It's such a good finger
Have
wave.
you ever checked the prostate for your fellows?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
I just had one recently, actually, at the doctor.
At
was
the doctor?
First time. It was the first time.
The real legitimate one.
Right.
Yeah.
The medical one. Indeed.
No, I think honestly, a lot of men are missing out on what a true orgasm can be because they're so stuck in this frame of I can't put anything in my butt or I'm gay,
I mean, there's certainly a lot tied up with those
Toxic
ideals of masculinity.
Yeah.
Well, not even toxic, but
Masculinity.
of old ideals of masculinity as
Yeah.
well, right? But those orgasms are pretty intense and
Yeah.
quite different. And if you're comfortable with it, however, it's not. And recently, some colleagues and I just published on this recently. It's not always the prostate where people are feeling the most pressure or their most pleasure. So sometimes it's at like the sphincter at the opening. Sometimes it's the fullness of the rectum, right? And so what we actually found when we conducted all of these like different focus groups and interviews was that not everybody, and these were heterosexual and homosexual men that received anal sex, right? Not everybody was pinpointing the same location on the anatomy where the pleasure was coming from. So it is a little bit different. And so like that idea of a G-spot for men as the prostate, that's kind of, for a lot of people, certainly the case, but for a lot of other people, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more nuanced.
But I think you're going to have to try before you know.
So the G-spot is not on the penis?
Not for a man.
Not in this case, not what we're talking about, because the G-spot in general, like, does it even exist is a completely different medical question for men and women, right? And so it really depends. It doesn't equate equally the clitoral stimulation as it does to the penile stimulation. It's not exactly the same. I have
Studies.
a penis, and there's been lots of studies done.
But how do you know if it's not an equal
distribution of like
for a woman
equal.
or a man if you only have one of the organs? You know what I'm
Sure,
saying?
just based on people's experiences and how they explain their experiences. It's certainly not to take away from it, but we're also most commonly when a lot of these studies are going on, or historically, a lot of the penises have been circumcised penises, which changes a couple of things on the male anatomy as far as sensitivity and things like that. You're turning an internal organ to an external organ. The skin changes and is thicker. So like that sensory, I don't want to call it sensory deprivation, but that change does impact all of those things. And so people that are uncircumcised have more feeling and more sensation. And so you can only kind of get at an understanding of what some of those differences might be.
So theoretically, there could be a man out there who has never had his G-spot wrong.
Oh, for sure.
Wow.
Sure,
Yeah.
definitely. And
That
I
sounds
guarantee
horrible.
you that there's many women that
Yeah.
even that they've had sex have never,
Oh, 100%.
right, that have never even orgasmed.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I didn't have an orgasm. until I
Get
was
help to those women stats.
That's why we're doing what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't have an orgasm for the first 4 years of intercourse, like with someone. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know, the story you told us in the beginning about your first time certainly raises some questions about an orgasm.
Yeah.
Like, did it happen?
No.
No.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was more like the mechanics, like what's happening?
Yeah.
Is this going to get on my sheets? You know,
Yeah.
is the neighbor going to hear?
No, they were
My
filming
neighbor,
it.
this is another, can I, if I may?
Yes. Yeah.
So this guy friend of mine, he hooks up with this woman from Vegas, and she was there on a girls' party, whatever, and she missed her flight 3 times.
Oh,
so she
geez.
ended up just moving. They're still together to this day. But they were in their apartment, and the police were called. And she goes to the door, and she's all in disarray. And the neighbors thought she was being murdered.
Oh my God. It was just rough sex.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, we're fine.
I'm doing great, actually. Never been better. I feel so good, so relaxed.
They called
Yeah.
the police.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some good sex right
That's
there.
some good sex.
All right. I think we probably need to wrap it up here. But I think the takeaway from this is obviously things do go wrong. Things go wrong in life. Things are going to go wrong in sexuality. But there is a way we can prevent some of these things from going wrong with testing, with proper lubrication, with a little bit of pre-planning.
Towels.
Towels. Yeah, the whole 9 yards. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a few mishaps, and I think if we could just laugh them off and keep moving, because we are all just human, it would make for the best sex and the best aftercare, and it'll bring you together more as a couple, I think. I've never queefed in front of someone that I haven't laughed about it later. So I think it can bring us all a little bit closer with our imperfections, if you will. So, all right, guys, that will do it for this episode. Kristi, tell the people where they can find you.
Oh, you can find me on KristiMcHugh.com. That's KRISTI. Are you going to have it on the bottom? There it is. Boom. .com. And Instagram and what else? Fans only. Just kidding. I don't have that. Not yet.
Not yet. No, I'm kidding. And Dr. Eddie, thank you for always your public health perspective. We appreciate you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, guys. Until next time. Adios.